First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizer of this conference, Robert Wellington, Mark Ledbury, and Lucina Ward, not to forget Alex Birchmore for making things run so smoothly. I must apologize to everybody. I thank you for coming here, and I must apologize because I will speak 25 minutes. Sorry. Maybe if I'm too stressed, I will speak only 20, but I hope I will speak 25. And sometimes I will say conférence instead of conference, so please, I beg your pardon. Anticipating the last session of this conference, I want to say I was surprised, impressed even, by the universal and contemporary myth of Versailles and Louis XIV. Sometimes I was overcorrect and say Louis XIV, so I apologize too. Just to come here, I took my plane in the suburbs of Paris, where of course you can find the old-fashioned Chateau de Versailles, but you can also see the new, trendy Chateau Louis XIV promoted by Kim Kardashian, a sort of Chateau de Vaux-le-Vicomte with a pool and an aquarium, so it's much more modern. And then I stopped in Abu Dhabi, and there I've been to see, of course, the new Louvre Abu Dhabi by Jean Nouvel, and I suppose you will all go there. And then I was very hesitating between having dinner in the Versailles ballroom or buying clothes in the Palace Versailles Fashion. You can also like this page. And taking a breath in the Versailles Abu Dhabi Khalifa City Gardens, or much better, going to Dubai to have my teeth whitened in the Versailles Dental Clinic. And eventually I arrived in Canberra and see the real magnificent Versailles show, which was such a relief. Actually, I will discuss here an aspect of the art produced at Versailles that couldn't be brought to Canberra, namely, just as Wolf did so nicely, the large-scale painted decoration by Charles Le Brun. You all know Charles Le Brun now, the first painter to the King Louis XIV. So in the eyes of posterity, Le Brun wears two hats: the prolific artist and what we'd call now the efficient project manager, able to carry out huge projects successfully. Depending on whether they admire or dislike his art historians see one or other of these talents as the more important of the two abilities that brought Le Brun to the attention of Louis XIV and Colbert, of course. Today, I'd like to focus on Le Brun's working process, and more specifically on the relation between planning and serendipity, and to show examples of the way he could alter his plan sometime at the very last moment. At first time, Le Brun's creative process appears to have involved careful advanced planning, almost to the point of being formulaic. He first thought about the overall organization of his decoration, mainly focusing on his architectural constraints. So let's take the example of the Hall of Mirrors. Here you can see three projects of the Hall of Mirrors. The first one on Apollo, on the theme of Apollo, the second one on the theme of Hercules, and what was a very huge changes in iconography, the last final executed one on the deeds of Louis XIV. But what appears in the comparison here is that the architectural rhythm of the window base was the first thing Le Brun thought about to organize his own composition. Once the overall organization has been established, Le Brun moved on to plan each individual scene. And here you have the example of it's nothing to see with French actuality, order restored to the state finances. So you can see here the individual scene, that Le Brun, the first concept, the preliminary concept, and after that Le Brun studied each figure, first nude, and you can see here Louis XIV nude, which is very exclusive opportunity, and then closed. Next came a reduced painted model, supposed to be shown to the king, and then the full-scale cartoon. So you have it here, so don't do a mistake. It's a drawing, but the size is a real one. So it was used to be to transfer the outlines on the vault, on the plaster, or on the canvas. So it's higher than I am, and not so high, but it's higher than I am. At that stage, Le Brun could carry out minor retouching, such as you see here in the personification of France and the profile. During the entire process, Le Brun could frequently introduce changes and even switch back and forth between new and old ideas. And we can see it in the example of the main compartment of the Hall of Mirrors, entitled "The King Governs by Himself." Le Brun tried out at least two drawings for the whole scene, and even on the second one, he was still hesitating, and so he changes his mind, doing a pentimento and gluing a new paper on the first one. You can see here the limits of the new paper. Even presenting the modello, the reduced painted model, he has new alteration, and for example, here, under the king coat, you have a child just playing music. So there are changes all over the time. Comparing the four main stages of drawings and painting, we cannot continuous changes, as for example, the role assigned to Minerva here and Mars here, which is growing, and they finally convince the king to renounce the pleasure of childhood and to pursue glory, which was not in this place, in the first one. And by contrast, Le Brun can switch back and forth, and for example, the place given to the children is really changing, and here, for example, they are really confined in the right side. Even after it completed, and it's more interesting even after the completion of the vault, Le Brun continued to alter the composition. He changed, for example, the position of Mercury to make him into a transitional figure, linking the two sides of the compartment. At the beginning, Le Brun painted Mercury here, and then he or maybe the king found it was not the good place, and to make it a transitional figure, he had to change the things. So he just painted, you see here a photograph taken during the restoration, and you can see that the first Mercury was here, with the transparency you can find in. And then he painted empty sky on the first Mercury, sorry, the micro, and glued a new patch of canvas just to change the place, which is quite extraordinary. It's a kind of antique copying in plastic and quite acrobatic. The flexibility evident in Le Brun's thinking is not limited to a few cases of trial and error. It can take the form of more substantial and unexpected changes. A very surprising example is given by the Apollo Gallery in the Palace of the Louvre. You all know everything about the Palace of the Louvre, but this is the first gallery Le Brun painted for Louis XIV, 15 years before painting the Hall of Mirrors. The project is known by several drawings. The project presented and shown by Le Brun to the king is known by a group of drawings. The first known were these two drawings in the Louvre, and recently, 10 years ago, Pierre Rosenberg found this one in Darmstadt, and I found this one in Montpellier, in the south of France, 4 years ago. And a private collector showed me this one a few months ago. So, and it's very interesting because you see, just so funny, the drawing, it was only one drawing and it was cut, and you can see the arms here and the arm here just coming here. And so keep an eye out for the missing pieces. These highly elaborated drawings made for the patron show the same general scheme, but offering different options. For example, the herm here is only one, and here you can have two. So Louis XIV was supposed to choose with that. Between them and the final execution, Le Brun considerably amplified the iconographic significance of the decor adding symbolic value to the ornamental element and creating relationship between them. In the drawing, for example, the tondi are sometimes empty and sometimes filled with the labors of the months, and they are flanked by putis and sphinxes and griffins, and surmounted by classical scenes of combats which have no linked with the central theme of Apollo. In the painted gallery itself, everything refers back to the central theme of Apollo, which is by turn the god of Parnassus, the god of the sun, the one who regulates time and reigns over space. My hypothesis is that the transition from one conception of the iconography to another was the result of a partly fortuitous discovery. To see this, we must make a detour to a very modest double-sided drawing. Let's see it here. So you have one side here and the second one here. The drawing shows 12 arcs flanked by pairs of animals and with the name of God here. So you have Jupiter, and just have a look at Pluton with the dogs here. The 12 gods are not arranged in any particular order. They do not relate directly to the months of the year, and they do not even represent the gods of Olympus, since Pluto, as you have seen, is included in the list. And what is really fun is a note by Le Brun here. I will show you better here. And I quote, "Cherchez pour Vulcain un animal." So it's need to find an animal for Vulcan. Doubtless, it was during his search for an animal that Le Brun learned about a link made between gods and sign of the zodiac. Maybe you know that by book or by discussion, through a discussion with a man of letter. We don't know. But these zodiac guardian relationships are described in a Latin text, the Astronomica of Manilius, adapted and translated into French in the 16th century. The first list of the 12 gods planned in the drawing was modified accordingly, and in the gallery, the choice of the deities and their order completely match the pairing of gods and signs found in Manilius, except in one case. There is no Vulcan to watch over Libra and the month of September. Here, the animal for the month of September is a dog, like the one Le Brun associated with Pluto in the drawing. His divine attributes are things made by... So the god is here, the divine attributes are here in the medallion, and they are all things made with fire, which means that they can be related either to Vulcan and to Pluto, or to Pluto. In this particular case, Le Brun's note, "Cherchez pour Vulcain un animal," suggests that we have here an example of what we call serendipity. In other words, the initial research proved unsuccessful. Le Brun did not find an animal for Vulcan, but it leads the attentive researcher to an unexpected and more significant discovery. Le Brun was looking for a specific motif, and he discovered a system of correspondences between the 12 Olympians and the sign of the zodiac. In doing so, he recognized a new possibility for tightening up the structure of his decoration, both iconographically, linking all the themes to the gods and to Apollo, and formally by creating a link between the vertical ornamental compartment and the horizontal one. You have the months, the labors of months here, the flower of the months here, the months themselves here, and the sign of the zodiac here. So the link is complete, horizontal and vertical. So the initial problem became a secondary one. the problem of the animal for Vulcan, and was solved by a sleight of hand, and Le Brun took the liberty to combine Vulcan and Pluto into one figure. These changes at the Louvre happened at the stage of the preliminary drawing. By contrast, in the Ambassador Staircase at Versailles, which we just heard about from Rolf, so you know everything, I will be very quick, we can see Le Brun making alteration at the late stage of the cartoons. And it has important consequences for our interpretation of the decor. The engraving of the vaulting show 4 groups in the center of the carving. So here, 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 and here Wolf have presented them. In the foreground of each are pair of muses, and they are accompanied by gods. So you have Minerva here, Hercules, Apollo, and here's the 9th Muses, which is comedy. And so Le Brun respected the number of the muse, 9, which is always a difficult number for ceiling designers, especially French one obsessed by the symmetry. But he resolved this problem. But by contrast, the attributes of the muses show that they are not the traditional one. And here, for example, you can see architecture, and here a muse is combining painting and sculpture. Above the sculpted busts of the king on the north side, the motif refers to Louis XIV's military successes. Minerva and Hercules illustrate wisdom and strength, and a 3-edged monster, according to Jean-François Félibien's interpretation, stands for the 3 enemies of France, namely Holland, Germany, and Spain. These are being crushed by the king's chariot, adorned with trophies taken from the vanquished. The muses who acknowledge these victories are eloquence here and history here. Opposite them, Apollo and comedy, Thalia, are accompanied by tragedy and heroic poetry, evoking the arts and their performance. The study of a small painted model here, now in private collection, and of the cartoons suggests that this elaborate configuration does not match the first design transferred to the vaulting. The bozzetto shows a less coherent group. Minerva is associated with lyric poetry, and the monster has 5 heads, and we had 3 enemies, so it's less coherent. We can deduce from this that Hercules and Apollo were supposed to face them, and we recognize here the association of the 2 images of the sovereign rather than a thematic interconnection. The painted model reflects a stage that Le Brun must have judged advanced enough to function as a basis for the development of the cartoons, which conform to it exactly. And for example, you can see the serpent heads here. So there were 5 serpent heads in the cartoons. And the cartoons have been transferred, the outlines have been transferred to the ceiling, and we can see that because there are the marks of the stylus. I'll show that later. Then it was just after developing the cartoon that Le Brun decided to arrange the figures differently. And you can see that here. So he made a lot of changes. For example, Minerva does not change. She remains here. But the lyric poetry changed side, and she became the comedy with 2 masks, and the tragedy changed sides, and the eloquence just go to the left, and she was replaced on the right by history. So a lot of changes at the last moment. All these cartoons, as I said, bear the marks of the transfer. And you can see here with a very detailed photo, the mark of the stylus. And what is really, really interesting is that you see here the lyra, which was not painted at the end. There are two masks, as I said, when lyric poetry was changed into comedy. So this poses a tricky question. What brought about this late change of plan? Why did Le Brun reorganize the pieces of the puzzle formed by the cartoons? Was it the somewhat belated outcome of the lengthy reflection on iconography, an idea that germinated during a discussion with the king, Colbert, an author, another artist, his wife, who were a brilliant inspiration resulting from an unplanned rearrangement of the cartoons, a fortuitous one in the studio on the scaffolding, we don't know. I'd prefer to think that it was a formal research that suddenly revealed new thematic possibilities. Pursuing this hypothesis, we can imagine that Le Brun sought to avoid the unfortunate effect of having the pairs of muses turning their backs to each other on the central motifs. Actually, we do find him hesitating over the orientation of one figure shown in two different cartoons. By moving the muses to make them face each other, two of the monster's heads became separated from its body, thus giving rise to the possible symbolism of the monster as the three powers hostile to France. That in turn led to the accentuation of the military character of the North carving, reinforced by the addition of the trophies and the introduction of Hercules. The subsequent transfer of the lyric poetry to the south side, close to Apollo, must have made her look redundant, since the lyre she holds is also the attribute of Apollo. Was it at that point that comedy was put in lyric poetry's place, and the lyre replaced by two masks? So you should see that perfectly. Which were apparently painted directly on the wall without the intermediate stage of a new cartoon. We don't have the cartoon with the two masks. Perhaps Le Brun wanted to include a subtle reminder of the comedy of power, or at least an echo of the theatrical staging of power accomplished by the staircase, where the fictional ambassadors on the wall admire the vaulting, because the one with the here is just admiring, and each pieces of les différentes nations du monde, 4 continents, there are people, there are false ambassadors looking at the staircase and other looking at the vaulting. So the fictional ambassadors admire on the walls, admire the vaulting, and the performance of the real ambassadors who go up, looking back at them and up at the vaulting in an endless play of mirror images. No doubt, and this will be my conclusion, the reconstruction of events belongs rather to historical fiction than to history. Nothing is less reliable than the attempt to recapture the intentions, thoughts, and accidents that governed the creation of a work, leaving no written traces. It's different for Chercher pour Vulcain un animal, of course. No one will ever really know why these changes were made. We know only the starting point, the bozzetto and the cartoons, and the end point through the engravings, which has become more coherent and richer in meaning. The only certain conclusion is that whatever it was that gave him his insights, here, as elsewhere, Le Brun knew how to grasp any opportunity to perfect his work, even up to the very last minute. Thank you.